Hello, welcome to Miss Hickman's video website. This is the second video in Unit 1, and going along with storytelling, it also talks about narrator and voice. So as usual, with this video, you can watch it as many times as you want. You can rewind it if you miss something, you can pause it to write notes, or you can fast forward to it. Once it is on my website, it will stay there for you and your parents to view all year. I highly recommend you take notes while watching this video. You are responsible for the information. Now, last time we talked about it, we learned about plot and setting. Today, we will talk about narrative techniques such as narrator and point of view. Now, on your note sheet, you will want to add to your narrative techniques after plot and setting and conflict, and put narrator and point of view. So basically, a narrator is the person telling the story. This is the person giving the narrator. In many Dr. Seuss movies, you have someone just kind of guiding the story along, such as like The Grinch Stole Christmas. You have the narrator talking about the Grinch and his activities, but he wasn't present in the story. But sometimes the narrator is present in the story. Sometimes it's the person, the main character, and they're using I words, such as like, I walked into the store. That's your narrator in that kind of story. Now, going with narrator, you have points of view, and there are 4 points of view you need to know about. The first is second person point of view. And the second person point of view employs the pronoun you. So in a story, sometimes you will see possibly the narrator, person telling the story, is talking to you. So an example is, sometimes you cannot clearly discern between anger and frustration. So that's a second person point of view. They're talking to a second person, which is you. So think of two people having a conversation. And I'm talking to you. So there's two people. There's the I, and then there's the you, the second person. Your second type of point of view is first person point of view. And this is where the narrator or person telling the story uses such words such as I and we. And they can be unreliable. Because the first person point of view means that there's one person, and you only see one person's side of the story. So in a book or a movie, you may see an example like, I felt like I was getting drowned with shame and disgrace. So you have that one person the entire story is told through their point of view. So through their eyes. And you don't get to see other people's feelings or thoughts, just theirs. Now there are 2 other point of views. And on your notes, you don't have to put all of this, but make sure you get the larger text. The 2 below are just examples, but if you find something in those 2 paragraphs below, feel free to write it down. But these are just giving you examples to distinguish between the 2. Now after first person point of view and second person point of view, you have 2 other types of points of views. You have omniscient point of view, where the narrator or the person telling the story is not a character in the story. They're able to tell us everything about everyone, including their thoughts and feelings. So the third person point of view uses pronouns like he, she, it, or they. So an example would be, Mr. Stewart is a principled man. He acts by the book and never lets you deceive him easily. It's really freeing because you aren't limited to a single character's perspective. So after you talk about Mr. Stewart and his feelings and about him, you might also hear about Miss Roberts and their point of view. So in this, the narrator knows everything about everyone and can talk about this. However, because it's so freeing and there's so many people's thoughts and feelings, it can be kind of disjointed and you can get kind of confused. You also have third person limited point of view, where the narrator or person that tells the story zooms in on one person but talks about them as he or she. One of the classic third person limited narratives is the Harry Potter series, and J.K. Rowling strays from Harry's perspective in only a tiny few rare instances. She therefore had to bend over backwards to filter everything the reader needed to know about the world through Harry's views. So if you've ever read Harry Potter, it's always about what Harry's feelings or thoughts. You never get to see what Hermione or Ron are thinking. It's always about what he's thinking. If Harry can't see it or feel it, it doesn't happen for the reader. So it's very limited. Third person is very limited because you only see with their thoughts and feelings and what's in front of them. So think of you're looking through one person's eyes. But omniscient point of view, you're looking through a bunch of people's eyes. So that's the difference between there. Limited to one person, limited one person, he or she. Omniscient means a bunch of people, so everyone's feelings. Okay. And these are your 4 points of view. First person, second person, third person, omniscient. And those are your point of views, and every story is told through one of those 4 points of views. So think back to your summer reading and what do you think that your point of view was in your story? We will be working more with that when we further in the unit. Another narrative technique is voice. So on your notes after points of view, you want to put voice. And voice is the writer's use of style and language overall, created by the author's tone and choice of words. And diction means choice of words. So that's also a vocabulary word you can write down. Diction means author's choice of words. So example, Dr. Seuss uses a lot of rhymes in his writings. So for instance, in Green Eggs and Ham, one part of it says, "Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham." Now, in this excerpt, Dr. Seuss uses rhyme in his writings and silly words, talking about green eggs and ham. So the author's voice, his use of style and language overall, is that it rhymes, so that's a style, and his language, it rhymes, but it's also very goofy. Sam I am, green eggs and ham. So Dr. Seuss's voice, his use of style and language, is very lighthearted and goofy. So where some writers, their voice is very serious. Another narrative technique that goes along with voice is mood. So mood in a story is the atmosphere of a piece of writing. It's the emotions a selection arouses in a reader. And mood uses the setting, so where things are, what's the location. Character's feelings, is the character feeling happy, scared, angry. And imagery. So imagery is when you close your eyes, it's what you see around you. So after you read the excerpt, what images are you seeing that goes with it to set the mood you're feeling? So the example below. He walked hesitantly, leaves crunching under his feet. Bare trees hovered over him, casting arm-like shadows across his path. His heart hammered in his chest as he inched forward. The mood is what you should be feeling when you read this. Now, for some of you, if you read this, or for most of you, you might feel tense, scared, maybe frightened. Because imagine the mood is maybe you've been maybe walking in the woods alone, leaves are crunching under your feet. Bare trees are hovering over him, blocking him in, casting arm-like shadows across his path. And his heart is hammering in his chest as he moves forward. So when you read this excerpt, the mood you are feeling is tense and frightening. Where before, in maybe Dr. Seuss's, "Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham." The mood is more lighthearted. So when you read this, you're supposed to feel more lighthearted. Where in this one, the mood is very dark and scary. Your final term in narrative techniques is tone. So the author's attitude towards the subject. So an example, "My buddies forced me to go on a date." His tone is negative towards the subject, so the date. So imagine you going out on a date with a girl, and maybe you don't want to go, but you might say, "My buddies forced me to go on the date." It's negative, his tone. But he could have said, "Oh man, I'm excited to go on this date. It's going to be great." It's a positive tone. So maybe your parents before maybe said, "Don't give me that tone." That means you're probably giving them a bad tone and they don't like it, or like saying bad things to them, even though what you're saying isn't bad, the way you're saying it. So another example. So father says, "We are going on a vacation." The son says, "That's great." So the tone of the son's response is very cheerful, and you can tell he's really excited. So that's his tone. Example 2. Father, "We can't go on vacation this summer." The son says, "Okay, great. That's what I expected." the son's tone is sarcastic in the response, so it's more negative. So it's all about how a person says something. Now, here is an excerpt, and we are going to look at narrator, point of view, voice, tone, and mood in this small excerpt. I'm going to read it aloud, but if you want to, you're more than welcome to fast forward, or you can pause it and read it yourself, but I will read it out loud. That night it stormed, and a school bus turned slowly into our small street from the main road, 1 block away. Our new house was only 2 blocks from my school, and yellow school buses went up and down the street mornings and afternoons, but never during the night. Now the bus moved carefully along the rain-drenched asphalt, and about 50 feet from our house it picked up speed. Lying in my bed, I heard the revving of the engine, and stepped quickly to the window, in time to see the bus skid from the street and mount the curb, barely missing our sycamore tree. It advanced solemnly, ponderously, as if in slow motion. Now, the first question is, who is the narrator? Who is the narrator? Also, who's the point of view? What voice is the author using? How is their tone? And what is their mood? Well, take some time. If you would like to, you can pause and take some time to think about this and answer for yourself. However, we will move forward and I will give you the answers for the sake of time. The narrator in this short story is the person lying in bed listening to the bus. They're the main character and part of the story. Right? So that's the person telling the story, and he's using I statements. And that's how your point of view. So it's first person point of view because the narrator says our, my, and I. So you can only know what they are feeling, seeing, and hearing. If it was a third person omniscient, you might see who was in the bus and know who was in the bus's feelings or why the bus was going that way. But because it's only first person point of view and the narrator is the person lying in bed, you only get to see their point of view, and the only thing they see is a bus skidding down the street towards them. Now, voice. In this excerpt, the voice is more intellectual, so we have rain-drenched asphalt, the revving of the engine, solemnly, ponderously. So they're using larger words. They seem to be knowledgeable about the bus. And the focus is not on the person lying in the bed. It's actually a focus on what is happening to the bus. So the author has a very serious tone. Going back to tone, the writer's attitude towards the bus coming is a negative one, because the bus seems almost evil. Because the bus is coming in the middle of the night, it's barely missing their tree, it's coming solemnly, which is negative, while in the middle of the night while the person's lying in bed. So the tone is the bus is something to be watchful for. It's something that's scary. And finally, you have the mood. So after reading this, you have a tense and fearful mood because the imagery, or what we see, what we are viewing in our heads when we read this, is that it's dark, it's raining, and the bus is revving its engine in the middle of the night when it's really quiet, and is almost crashing into the narrator. So the mood you're feeling when you read this is tense and you're fearful and you're supposed to be scared. And the author's tone of the bus coming towards you is a scared one. The narrator, the person lying in the bed, they're talking about being scared. So, that is the end of this video. We have the narrator, the 4 points of view, voice, mood, and tone. Those are your vocabulary words. If you need to, rewatch this video as needed. As many times as you need to. You can even pause it to write down vocabulary words. If you have questions, write them down on your notes, and we will go over them in class. But you are expected to have these vocabulary words down, and you're expected to have watched this video to understand the best you can. Now, but if you have questions, feel free to write them down. Okay, have a good night.